So they say every scratch tells a tale, every ding tells a story, and every mark has something to say. Well, most of the stories behind this guitar is Kai was doing dumb shit. Today I'm going to be running through the story of my PRS S2 Satin 24. I've had a lot of guitars come and go in the past 6 years, but this one stayed as number one pretty much the whole time. Let's start up by hearing it in a full mix, then later on I'll talk through everything that went into it. So 6 years ago, I was in college studying music. I was 18 years old and I was in an indie rock band. I visited my local music shop at the time, hoping to pick up some kind of Stratocaster. Just as I walked through the door, the shop had received their shipment of PRS S2 Satins. As soon as I saw this one on the bench, I knew that I had to try it out. I immediately asked if I could give it a spin, and to my surprise, they obliged. It was an absolute dream to play and nothing like anything I'd ever really played before. The natural satin finish felt super comfortable under the hand and the setup was absolutely perfect. So I put the deposit down on the guitar there and then and worked to pay it off over the course of a few months. Since then, it's seen me through 3 different bands, a bunch of gigs in local sweaty dive bars and tons of high energy rehearsal sessions. And it's definitely starting to show some signs of use. So what is the S2 line? The PRS S2 series was designed as a budget alternative to the more expensive CE and CU models. The whole point of the S2 was to make them American made while keeping them as cheap as possible, the Satin series being the cheapest of the bunch. The hardware is mostly PRS SE hardware, but everything else on it is US built. These guitars were built to be played. No frills, no nonsense, just everything stripped down to the core essentials and making sure that those essentials are the best they can be. So let's have a rundown of the specs on this guitar, including the modifications that I've made to it. This one's got a mahogany body and neck, finished in a super thin coat of nitrocellulose lacquer, painted in Makati Tobacco Sunburst. It's got a rosewood fretboard, 25-inch scale, 24 frets, and a PRS floating tremolo. As for electronics, I've modded it for the Seymour Duncan Pegasus and Sentient set with a single volume control and a coil split. I tend to gut the tone circuit whenever I rewire pickups as it's not really something that I use. We'll talk more about these pickups later on in the demo. So how have I used the guitar? Well, first up was my first ever proper band. We were called China Cemetery. We were an indie rock project in the vein of Cold War Kids and the Hives. We had super high energy live shows. Lots of thrashing about on the floor, throwing myself up the walls and sprinting through the crowds with my wireless system. Next up was a little pop punk band I did called Sleepin' Ropes. That one didn't actually last too long, and after a few rehearsal sessions I actually ended up quitting the band, never having played a live show with them. More recently, I was in a band in college called Dapper Raptor. We had a bunch of rehearsal sessions, but not many live shows. The genre was somewhere between pop punk and dad rock, and it was still super high energy live. As you can probably see, this guitar has been thrown about on stage a lot. I never took a backup guitar to gigs. The S2 has always been solid as a rock for me. Since then, I've mostly been a bedroom player. It's cropped up on a bunch of my videos already, so I wouldn't be surprised if you've already seen me using this one on my channel. Now, this guitar has seen a lot of pickups. It started out with the PRS SE pickups, which I liked at the time for the band I was in, but I found them pretty muddy doing high gain stuff, so I moved to a custom set of Zombie Dust pickups. I hoped that these Zombie Dust pickups would brighten it up a bit and give my tone a bit more life, but unfortunately they were very geared for doom, and they didn't have much clarity at all. From there, I switched it out for Winspear pickups. These were gorgeous. They had brown bobbin horns and a glow inlay logo. They had immense clarity, fantastic note separation, and they sounded super aggressive for modern metal. Unfortunately, these were too far in the bright direction. I actually struggled dialing them in. Now I've settled on the Seymour Duncan Pegasus and Sentient set. I wanted a set that was versatile enough to cover everything Drop C related. For my tastes, this would be everything from pop punk to metalcore to gent. I really like this set. They definitely favour the high end, but not to the detriment of low end power. They're pretty balanced sounding and they sound great when you pick hard. Let's jump over to some quick demos of this one and hear how it sounds in isolation. I'll be using ML SoundLab Amped for all of the guitars on this one, the Highwind Direwolf to boost it on the metal settings, and I'll even do a knocked loose style tone with the amped Stevie T Shredema model boosted with a Xander Cyclone fuzz. Now for the exciting part, the finish. I'm going to run through every single finish defect that I can remember. So I'll start by saying these S2s have a super thin finish. It's 0.1mm thick. This means that even the slightest bump, knock or scrape will flake the finish off entirely. While that may put some people off, the idea of it relicking naturally was a massive bonus to me. In fact, as soon as I got it home and pulled it out the case for the very first time, I knocked the headstock on the desk and flaked the finish off instantly. Let's run through all of the other finish wear on this one. First up, we've got the more obvious one, the pick marks. This is from years of terrible picking technique. Next up, sweaty arm marks. Multiple years of sweaty rehearsal sessions and live gigs in hot dive bars have really played a number on this finish. And clip locks. Clip locks are my favourite strap by a wide margin, but I could have saved a lot of issues with this finish if I hadn't have used them. The hard plastic of the strap just chews away at the finish. I used to sling this guitar in the gig bag with the strap attached and walk 3 miles to college and back every day. This has chewed up all of the main contact points where the clip lock meets the body, and it's also left a bunch of other dents all over it. Now, the neck is where we really get to my dumb decision. I was tidying up the fret ends of this guitar because the UK humidity had shifted the neck a little bit, and I wanted to tape the neck off to protect it from scratches. Well, I ran out of painter's tape and I used medical tape instead. It worked great until I had to peel it off. As soon as I started peeling it off, I knew that I'd messed up. The whole finish across both sides of the neck came clean off. I ended up having to strip the entire finish off the guitar and refinish it in true oil and gunstock wax. Thankfully though, this turned out to be a fantastic idea, as the neck is the smoothest, comfiest neck I've ever played. Last up on the finish, we've got a bunch of wear points. Most of these are pretty recent additions, since I've been playing sat down a lot more recently. General use has just started wearing this guitar down on every point that it makes contact with my body. Other than that, we've got a massive amount of relicking at the bridge. Lots and lots of palm mutes have meant that I've stripped through the finish of this one, right the way to the pop metal core of the inside of the bridge. So I've always said that this guitar is my number one. The guitar I'll never sell, the guitar I'd like to be buried with, and the guitar I want to be known for. But there was a brief period last year where I just fell out of love with it. And this brings me on to a really interesting point of discussion. Last year I had this guitar set up with an absolutely slammed action. It was set up exactly how I like it. No buzz, no dead spots, it was super easy to play and it was super comfortable. But I just wasn't feeling it. I put it down to shifts in the weather shifting the neck and making me not like it anymore, and I just kind of put the guitar by the wayside as I waited for the weather to shift around again. I even took it to a local tech and asked them if the fretwork and everything was exactly as it should be, and they said it was perfect. This really dumbfounded me. Why did I not love my favourite guitar? How did I fall out of love with it? Was it just because I'd tried new guitars and this one just wasn't doing it for me anymore? Well, as it turns out, this guitar doesn't actually favour the perfect setup. And that brings me on to, when is good better than perfect? As a last resort, I figured I'd try and set this guitar up for a medium action instead of the slammed low action that I usually favour. Suddenly this guitar just really opened up. It felt resonant, loud, and alive again. I'm so glad I stuck with it, because this is now firmly secured its spot as my number one guitar. So in conclusion, this guitar is an absolute gem, and they're still relatively undiscovered. Now, they are sitting at an odd price point. They're about the same price as a used CE, and they're cheaper than the most expensive SE. So would I recommend them? I'd say 100% yes. This guitar has not disappointed me at all. Personally, I'm waiting for the right deal to come up on a Robin's Egg Blue 594. So do you love this one? Do you hate it? It's a polarizing guitar for sure, but let me know what you thought of it in the comment section below. Let's have a chat about it. Thank you for watching this video, I really appreciate it. If you like what I do and you'd like to see more from me, hit the subscribe button.